Okay guys, we got here an open letter that I'm going to read, and actually you should do it yourselves. I'll link it down in the video description. It might well help in people's defense against mandated health passports and help guide employers, employees and just anyone when it comes to their rights. Now at this point we have all heard about the vaccine passports being pushed, which as I said before, when it comes to the international ones we cannot do much about. Domestically though, we can stop it, and governments should not be legally allowed to do it and should stop businesses from doing it also. But in the event the government doesn't bother trying to stop employers mandating vaccines, then we do have some rights that should stop all of this nonsense dead in its tracks. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe passed Resolution 2361 of 2021, which ensures vaccination is not mandatory and that it cannot be used to discriminate against anyone who does not want it. Now, for those who don't know, the Council of Europe is nothing to do with the EU and actually predates it by about 25 years. It was founded by the UK and a few other European nations to protect our human rights, and actually played a big part in calling out the swine flu con job 11 years ago. This rule in here could well be our salvation by carrying huge weight legally here in the UK. This of course builds on a Nuremberg Code that bans all mandatory medical interventions and any attempt to force people to take them, even by coercion. On this basis, the UK domestic vaccine passport should be easy to defeat, and there is even a chance any international one in Europe could fall thanks to this. As it states in it, it's not legal advice, but it is a basis to take it from. It certainly gives us hope, let me tell you that. Because I'd argue a judge would have to accept what has been stated by the Council of Europe, Nuremberg Code, and just common fucking sense. Now, I feel I have to say I'm not going to read the entire open letter because it is fairly long. And to be honest, I doubt I can even repeat some of what is in there on YouTube, despite it being true from what I can tell. I will have to do a separate video on them and post them on Odyssey and BitChute as my first exclusive alt-tech video, so make sure to follow me over there if you want to see it. The links will be down below as always. Now though, let's go through what we can to see how this might be used by you guys to stop vaccine passports becoming a thing, or at least defend yourself from overzealous employers if they do, which is probably how we would bring them down. It is dated the 30th of January 2021 and is coming from the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, Lawyers for Liberty and the Workers of England Union. It says open letter RE vaccination mandates by employers for employees or potential employees. Number 1. We have seen reports in the media that some employers are considering mandating vaccines for COVID-19 for existing employees and job seekers. We have also been contacted by several worried and distressed individuals who are being told by their employers that they are required to have the vaccine as a condition of their existing employment. We are most concerned by these reports and the potential inequitable treatment of employees or job seekers by employers. As such, we feel compelled to write this open letter to assist individuals who are affected by any such inequitable treatment. This letter is not intended to give, nor should it be taken as given, any legal advice or medical advice. Anyone reading this letter who has any concerns or queries should take their own legal advice and seek any medical assistance as appropriate or necessary. Which of course goes without saying, but you have to add it in there. It says, it is an established principle in English law that an individual with the capacity to consent cannot and should not be compelled to have any medical treatment against their wishes. This is further explained below in the section dealing with informed consent. The Public Health Control of Disease Act 1984, Section 45E, provides that regulations made under certain sections of the Act may not include provisions requiring a person to undergo medical treatment. Medical treatment includes vaccination and other prophylactic treatment. Furthermore, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe passed Resolution number 2361 of 2021, in which it was stated that 6.1 paragraph 7.31 ensure that citizens are informed that the vaccination is not mandatory and that no one is politically, socially or otherwise pressured to get themselves vaccinated if they do not wish to do so themselves. 6.2 paragraph 7.32 ensure that no one is discriminated against for not having been vaccinated due to possible health risks or not wanting to be vaccinated. We would argue that this principle enshrined in our domestic law would make it inequitable and potentially unlawful for any employer to seek to mandate the vaccine. Which in all honesty is realistically all you need to know. That little bit there should be enough to shit all over an employer or anyone trying to mandate these vaccine passports in the UK at least. And I'd argue, as it's the Council of Europe with 47 member states being part of it, that most of Europe should be encompassed also. That of course will remain to be seen. We might well need court cases to challenge this bollocks. As a matter of fact, I expect we will, which is why I'm making this video. Next up, we have the part about contract of employment, which is very important to employers, obviously, and the employees or people who are going to be looking for a job when this shit show starts to subside and the country opens up again. It says contract of employment. An individual's employment is governed by a contract of employment. The contract, this contains the terms and conditions regulating the working relationship between the employer and the employee. Any material change to this contract can normally only be made with the agreement of both parties. Consequently, if the contract does not contain a specific clause to require a vaccine for COVID-19, then the employer is, in most cases, unable to unilaterally change the contract and insist on a vaccine being the condition of employment. Likewise, any attempt by an employer to circumvent this by dismissing and then rehiring an employee on new contractual terms may be considered unlawful. If the employer nevertheless continues to unilaterally change the contract, such a change is likely to be in breach of contract. The employer would have to demonstrate that the mandating of the vaccine was a reasonable instruction in all the circumstances to avoid being in breach of contract. Reasonable instruction would have to be considered in light of the contents of this letter, and each case would have to be decided upon in its own facts. If the employer was unable to demonstrate the change was a reasonable instruction, and provided the employee has the requisite length of service, the employee may be able to resign and pursue a damages claim for constructive unfair dismissal against the employer in the civil courts. This damage claim, including all associated costs, could be substantial, and this financial exposure may not be covered by an employer's insurance policy. Which says to me, if you're an employer and you plan on going down this route, I would be very fucking careful about what you are doing. If someone challenges this in court and you lose, you could well be in the shit. And obviously, that would open up a fuckload more to be coming at every other person who is doing it, or should I say every other business there is anyway. It goes on, additional considerations for employers. Some employers are now reported as stating that they will make the vaccine a condition of employment being granted to new employees. Again, we have grave concerns over mandating vaccines for the following reasons, expanded upon further in this letter, which would apply equally to existing employees and job seekers, including apprentices and work experience and similar classes of workers. Now, I've actually had to skip a bit here because I don't know if YouTube will take a shit if I even repeat it, despite the fact that they actually link sources and the rest of it, we know YouTube doesn't care about that. These are the parts that I will include in the Odyssey and BitChute video that I will upload soon. Personally, I find it fucking amazing that I have to do it, but this is the world that we live in. I expect it's not going to get any better, let's be honest. So let's move on to discrimination. 33. Many employees or job seekers may be able to have vaccines due to protected characteristics, such as disability, age, sex, race, pregnancy, or certain medical conditions, falling under the Equality Act 2010. Discrimination under the Equality Act 2010 applies equally to existing employees and to job seekers. We also repeat the contents of paragraph 7.32 of the resolution passed by the Council of Europe, set out above in paragraph 6, that states no one is to be discriminated against for not having been vaccinated due to possible health risks or not wanting to be vaccinated. Mandating a vaccine may be considered discrimination, which may allow the employee or job seeker to bring a claim for damages. Discrimination can take the form of direct or indirect discrimination, harassment or victimization, all of which could be relevant in this situation and are matters which any employer should be alert to. Furthermore, any differentiation in treatment between those who have or have not been vaccinated may amount to indirect discrimination. Potential situations where a claim for indirect discrimination may be made by an employee include where an employee cannot return to their place of work without vaccination, an employer declines to pay sick pay to an employee who has refused a vaccination and subsequently has a COVID-19 related absence. Example is unwell or is otherwise required to self-isolate. Also, in the context of performance of their role and associated impact on performance reviews, bonuses and promotion, they are unable to undertake business travel to countries which impose vaccination as an entry requirement. Damages would be uncapped and include loss of earnings, potential earnings as well as injury to feelings and interest. In some situations, there can be aggravated damages if the court finds that the employer behaved in a malicious or heavy-handed way. We would again highlight that some insurers may refuse to cover claims where there are very real concerns over the vaccine and where the employer is clearly on notice or should be on notice of such concerns, but the employer proceeded to mandate the vaccine in any event in a manner contrary to the Equality Act 2010. Employers also need to be aware that even if a contract allows for the vaccine, if they continue to mandate this requirement and fail to take into consideration the personal circumstances of the employee and any protected characteristics, they could face a claim for indirect discrimination in the terms set out above. Which obviously, to me the layman, makes it look like a bit of a minefield for an employer to go down this route. If I was them, I would avoid it like the bubonic plague. Next, we have the requirement for fully informed consent, which means they can't do fuck all to you without you saying so, and knowing what the fuck is going on. It says the administration of any vaccine may only occur with the fully informed consent of the individual. The law in relation to informed consent is summarised below, and is set out in more detail in the reference letter that the UK Medical Freedom Alliance have produced. We urge you to read this document carefully, as it sets out laws protecting bodily autonomy and the legal right of an individual to refuse any medical treatment or intervention without punishment. We also reiterate the contents of paragraphs 5 and 6 above. It says the employee must be free to accept or refuse any treatment. The employee's decision should be voluntary and must not be influenced by pressure from medical staff, friends or family. We would argue that an employer would also be caught by this provision. The Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights states that any preventative, diagnostic or therapeutic medical intervention must only be carried out with the prior, free and informed consent of the person concerned, based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be expressed and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time, and for any reason, without disadvantage or prejudice. If an employer still wishes to proceed with mandating the vaccine despite what is stated above, they must ensure that the employee is given the opportunity to consent to or refuse the vaccine, and this consent must be free and voluntary. To threaten the employee with dismissal or refuse a job offer based on refusal to have the vaccine or to apply any other restrictions or penalties may be considered to amount to coercion on the part of the employer, and may allow the employee or job seeker to potentially bring legal action. Which obviously, if you're an employee of a small business or even a medium one, you really don't want. Actually, even if you're a big one, let's be honest, you get 100 or so of these cases, taking a few $100,000 off you at a time, you're in the shit. The PR for it would also sink your stock prices, so you would literally, like I just said, be right in the shit. Next up, we have data protection. If an employer requests evidence of vaccinations from its employees, this in itself gives rise to significant data protection issues and privacy law concerns, opening up an employer to even further legal risks. Further explanation is beyond the scope of this letter, but this issue should be considered by employers. And now we get to the summary, which is where I will end this video. It says, we understand there is a natural desire for many employers to protect their workforce and customers. However, in the context of COVID-19 vaccines, this desire should be weighed against the wider legal and ethical issues surrounding a policy of vaccine mandate, as well as the state of the existing evidence on COVID-19 vaccine safety and efficacy. It is important to fully acknowledge the current available scientific evidence regarding the efficacy and safety of this vaccine. Now obviously, as I stated at the beginning, it's not legal advice and certainly not medical advice. I would never give you either of them, let's be honest. What I'm doing here and what this letter is just showing you the basis in which you could use to defend yourself against this lunacy, and obviously take the government to court if you can. I feel we may need legal challenges against the government and various businesses to stop this bullshit from happening. I don't care what side of the vaccine debate you're on, at the end of the day, this shouldn't be allowed. If people want to get the vaccine, that is entirely up to them. They should be allowed to make the choice. If they don't, the same goes for them. It doesn't matter what your reasons for wanting it or not wanting it are, I honestly don't care. I'm not about sitting here getting pissed off because someone wants to do something that I might not want to, or someone doesn't want to do something that I want to, for instance. That is just small fry bullshit. What we need to stop is the government overreach and businesses telling people who can and can't go inside their shops. Take a look at Morrison yesterday, trying to put yellow stickers on people who haven't got a mask or are disabled. What the fuck is going on there? This absolute bollocks needs to stop, and it needs to be stopped now.